Hello everyone. It is late November and I am sitting in my car because it's the only place I can get alone to film a video. I'm trying to regulate the temperature, which is getting kind of weird because I got a blanket on, but I've also got the door open to let a little bit of fresh air in. It's a balancing act, so we'll see. Also, because I need to say this, otherwise some guy, usually on Minds, is going to complain about me looking like all fat and sloppy. I am pregnant right now. Fat and sloppy is kind of the standard at this point. I have to live with it, so do you have to live with it. Anyway, getting on to the subject, I don't pay attention to a lot of the internet drama. I've got a lot of stuff in my own life going on. I've got mom stuff that I'm doing. I've got a video game that I found just recently that I've had a lot of fun with. And I just, every once in a while I kind of need to unplug from the internet. So I don't pay attention to a lot of the drama that goes on. And I kind of just completely missed the AGP Gate Gen thing. I'm only just hearing about it now. And I don't want to comment on that incident specifically. Obviously, I have Phil Lilly's book. I didn't bring it into the car with me, which was kind of a mistake because it's a lovely book. It's huge though, like it's this thick. I use it as a reference material. I saw a lot of people trashing his book and saying it wasn't a good book and it had all these problems. And honestly, it was a great book for me because I couldn't find information on autoandrophilia. I couldn't find information on autogynophilia. Like, there just wasn't a lot of information out there that was available. And I kind of happened to stumble onto Phil Lilly's book and, it helped me. So I'm deeply appreciative of his work. I understand that, a lot of people have nitpicky things like, oh, he says it's okay for children to transition or whatever. I don't know if he actually said that. That's what some people are saying he said. I use this book as a reference material, so I go to the glossary and I look up some piece of information or some term that I want to know more about, and then I can flip to that page in the book and get a very informative picture of that issue or that idea. And it's been really handy because it's a huge compilation of information. And so it's a really good reference material. I haven't done a book review of it because it's not exactly the kind of book that you sit and just read cover to cover. But I personally really appreciated it. And that's actually not the point of this video. The point of this video was more how people handle autogynophiles. And, it was kind of something I've been wanting to talk about. And the fact that Phil Lilly wore a blue dress at GenSpect, that's a good, segue into that conversation. But then also I was kind of wandering the internet and I found this video by Brianna Ivy. And I agree with a lot of the things she says when she talks about, people who are constantly just blindly affirming people who are like, am I trans? Like, oh, yes, you're definitely trans. She's right. Like, there's a lot of problems. And I'm glad that she's highlighting a lot of those problems. But she's looking at it and saying, well, there's autogynophiles, and then there's real trans people. And real trans people aren't like this. And I'm not sure she's right. There are problems with the Blanchard typology. There's a lot of problems with the Blanchard typology, but it's a really interesting spot to start out at because that's kind of where I started with all this. It was like, okay, let's face the facts. Let's go to the Blanchard typology. You've got your homosexual transsexuals, which is such an outdated term. It's kind of awkward and cringy, but there you go. And then you've got your autogynophiles. And those are the two types of people that he was seeing in the gender clinic. Again and again and again. Nowadays, we've got ROGD. ROGD is its own unique mishmash of things. You got a lot of confused teenagers in the ROGD camp. You got a lot of people who are trying to fit in. You got a lot of people with a lot of big emotional problems who are trying to fix themselves in any way that they possibly can find. And the internet keeps telling them, oh, you're transgender. And so they're like, oh, I'm transgender. Now what do I do? How do I fix myself? So ROGD is all sorts of things. I don't think it's really going to be particularly helpful to apply the Blanchard typology to anyone in the ROGD camp, because that's just its own Huge mess. But when it comes to people who are adults who are trying to transition, you do still see that typology, that Blanchard typology, start to play itself out, where it's like, ultimately, what's making you want to transition? Well, I'm gay and I'm not comfortable with it, which is a problem, a huge problem. We have a lot of homophobia in our society that I didn't even know existed. Like, I wasn't paying attention, but when I look at it, when I see and hear a lot of the things that a lot of people in the trans community are saying about themselves and about gay people, we have a huge problem with homophobia. It's just massive and it needs to be addressed. This is not that video, sadly. This is the video where we talk about the other half of the Blanchard typology, which is the autogynophiles. Everybody loves to hate on the autogynophiles. And, you know, we'll say AGP, AAP, auto androphiles kind of get lumped in there, but we're sort of invisible, so we sort of don't count. But like, everybody really likes to hate on autogynophiles. That horrible, ugly looking man in the mall who's wearing pigtails and a mini skirt, that's an autogynophile. No true trans person would ever get caught dead looking like that. I mean, did you see his stubble? That's the discourse around autogynophilia. That's what people think of when they think of autogynophiles. Creepy perverts. And even in this interview right here, these are people who are experts. They're experts in the field. You know, one of them is a clinical psychologist, I think. And so I'm assuming that they know what they're talking about. And I'm trying really hard to listen with an open mind here because I'm still learning. But when she says that she doesn't think people with a fetish should be working with children, I had this momentary like, uh-oh. And here's why I had it. Number one, I have absolutely no interest in ever working with children. Like, I'm an autoandrophile, no interest in working with children. I have my own children. That's enough children. I don't need, this is my 5th pregnancy. I don't want any, well, my 5th child. I don't want any more to do with children than what I already have to do with children. Somebody else go take care of kids because I got my hands full with the kids I've already got. That being said, I have soon to be 5 children. If people are saying that autogynophiles and kind of invisibly by extension autoandrophiles shouldn't be working with kids, that's a little bit too close to, you know, should I be around my kids? Should I? Do I have business being around my own children? Like, am I a threat to my kids? I'm a little concerned about the fact that this is being spoken about in this way. Is she wrong? I don't know. Maybe she's not. Are these things inherently damaging enough that people with these situations going on in their lives should be kept away from children? Because, I mean, like I said, I got soon to be 5 kids. Should I be kept away from children? And, I mean, my kids have friends. My kids' friends come over to my house all the time. Like, they don't even knock on the door anymore. They just kind of come barging in. It's like, oh, hey, how are you doing? Is so-and-so ready to play? Are they free to play? Are they busy doing their homework, or can they come out? You know, they practically, they invite themselves over for supper all the time. You know, autogynophiles shouldn't be around kids. Autoandrophiles shouldn't be around kids. People with fetishes like this shouldn't be around kids. What am I supposed to do? I'm around kids all the time, whether I want it or not. Like, I've got 4 kids. Those 4 kids kind of manifest other children, other people's kids around them all the time. It's kind of inevitable. And it's like, well, do I want my kids to grow up healthy and well-adjusted? Yes, I would like my children to grow up healthy and well-adjusted. Does that mean the neighbor's kids are allowed to come over for dinner? Yes, it means the neighbor's kids are allowed to come over for dinner. So immediately that's a little bit jarring for me. Is she wrong? I don't know. You know, she's a professional saying this, so is she wrong? I don't know. That's a good question. That's a really good question. And I think there's a lot to dive into here. Autogynophilia, by definition, not autoandrophilia, so, you know, just reverse the genders and you got it, is this sexual attraction to the self as the opposite gender. And I use the term sex and gender interchangeably. I prefer gender because it sounds slightly less alarming for the YouTube censors. It's becoming sexually excited by being the opposite gender. And that's the definition. That's the term. And it's like, for the longest time, I didn't think I was an autoandrophile, because it's like, well, I'm not getting turned on by any of this stuff. I'm happy. I feel comfortable. I feel like I'm in my own happy little space, and this fits me. I feel like this really suits me. You know, being a tomboy suits me. Hanging out with the guys suits me. I'm happy when I'm doing masculine things. That just fits who I am. Am I getting aroused off of it? No. I'm happy this way. I remember going to my therapist and having the most awkward conversation on earth with her when I told her I think I might be transgender. She's like, are you feeling dysphoria? I'm like, not really. No, I don't really know much about dysphoria, but I'm definitely feeling euphoria. And she's listening to me, and I'm trying to describe to her some of these situations where people mistake me for a man, and I feel really flattered. Like, oh, thank you. You know, and she's, I guess, reading something into it that's, oh, this is a sexual thing then. And she looked absolutely horrified. And I'm sitting there like, look, I was not sexually aroused when a man in a grocery store asked me for help locating the allspice and said, hey, sir, could you help me with this? Like, it was powdered sugar. I think he was looking for powdered sugar. We were in the sugar aisle, you know, and it was just, there was no part of me that felt like sexually aroused helping some dude find powdered sugar in the sugar aisle. You know, he thought I was a man, and I was flattered. That's pretty much it. It's like if somebody walked up to you and said, hey, your hair looks really good today, or hey, I really like that shirt on you, it looks very flattering. It's like, oh, that's awesome, thank you. You don't get horny over that. And so I was sitting there for the longest time thinking, I'm not an autoandrophile, you know, I'm not in this camp, right? Well, yeah, no, I am in that camp. Yeah, I am an autoandrophile. Because I might not be turned on by the idea of being a man or being perceived as a man in my day-to-day life, but when I go into the bedroom and I'm doing stuff with my husband, yes, there is that element there. I'm not gonna deny it. It's there. It exists. It's part of the thing. Some crude asshole online was like, so you peg your husband, so what? It's like, I do not, actually, and I think he would be offended at the idea that I did, so I'm gonna just put that out there. No, but, you know, honestly, what I do in the bedroom is my own business, and maybe that's just it. You know, if you have a sexual fetish, and you do stuff in the wonderful privacy of your own bedroom with your own partner, and they're willing and consenting and sometimes actually very eager, who gives a shit what you do? It's your own damn business. Like, I'm discussing it because I'm trying to give you guys an idea of just the range that I'm seeing when it comes to autogynophilia and autoandrophilia. Because I think there's a range to it. And I think that that's important to discuss because not all of us are creepy perverts. You know, as weird as that might sound to somebody, not all of us are creepy perverts. And that's something that needs to be discussed. It's really difficult to breathe when you're super pregnant. I heard that it was the progesterone that can cause shortness of breath. I could be wrong. Definitely having a small person just pushing farther and farther and farther up against your lungs, that'll cause some shortness of breath. Can't breathe. Just can't breathe. Ever. Like, I can't wait to have this baby so that I can actually take a deep, full breath of air. That just sounds so nice. Anyway, so speaking of the range, first thing, I'm not entirely convinced that autogynophilia and autoandrophilia are the same thing, because I'm not sure that they are. I don't know. Female brain works a little bit differently than male brain. And as much as I wish I could say, oh, I just have a male brain, I have a female brain. It functions in very feminine ways, and it does all sorts of very female things. Denying that would be to lie. So there we go. Women are not inherently as sexual as men. We're just not quite as driven in that way. it doesn't mean that we have low libido, because clearly throughout my life, in my time as a stripper, I had a very, very high libido, partially because I was getting lots and lots and lots of exercise, which helps to raise libido, and partially because I had a virtually endless stream of potential sexual partners to choose from, which was very exciting. And, you know, it was nice. I guess it was nice. It would have been nice if I had been attracted to more of them. As it was, I kept on seeing men that I wasn't attracted to and hoping that I would find one that I was attracted to. Thank God I did find one that I was attracted to, and now I have 5 children. 4.5. So I can't speak for autogynophiles entirely, because I understand myself as an autoandrophile, and I understand autoandrophilia just from a female perspective, but I'm not entirely sure how consistently that aligns with autogynophilia. In many ways, I think it does align. In some ways, I'm not sure. So, trying to keep an open mind about that. However, I would say that at least when it comes to autoandrophilia, there's a spectrum. Some people are just super horny at the idea of being men. Some autoandrophiles. There are personal accounts, which you can actually find in Phil Lilly's book, interestingly, of individuals talking about being extremely sexually aroused at the idea of being men or boys, and goodness knows there's is it pronounced yaoi? I'm just this word right here. There's that. That's a thing. That's a huge thing on the internet. I never really got into that too much. I definitely was exposed to it in late high school. So there is that element of it. It's definitely out there. But I think there's also kind of the other end of the spectrum where it's like, I think there are a lot of people who just get warm fuzzies from being perceived as the opposite sex. I get a lot of warm fuzzies from being perceived as the opposite sex. I love it. I absolutely love it. That's a piece of who I am. It's been a fundamental piece of who I am pretty much my whole life. And, you know, it just makes me happy. That's what I like. That's how I like to be. That's part of my life. Am I an autoandrophile? Well, technically, according to the definition, I mean, when I'm, you know, sneaking off to be alone with my husband, is that element in my sexuality? Yes, that element is in my sexuality. Therefore, technically, by definition, autoandrophile. Am I going around in my day-to-day life getting horny or turned on by masculine things that I do? No. No, I am not. Am I happy doing masculine things? I'm happy doing masculine things. Being able to do things that you find fulfilling and pleasant is important. A person should be allowed to do things they find fulfilling and pleasant. If you take that and reverse it, if a man likes to wear dresses because he just feels pretty in the dresses, and he thinks that he should be allowed to wear dresses in order to feel pretty and comfortable inside his own skin, why is that a problem? Why is that a problem? Like, seriously, is that a problem? Now, then you gotta go to the other end of the spectrum. People who get ridiculously horny and turned on by, for example, and this is something I'm taking out of Phil Lilly's book again. I really liked that book. A woman getting turned on by wearing a pair of jeans, because for a while, jeans were a man's clothing item, specifically. Getting all turned on and aroused by wearing men's jeans. There you go. You're getting your rocks off on wearing some denim. Good for you, I guess. That's a little bit fetishistic, but you know, okay, you got your fetish there. Clearly a fetish, clearly a sexual paraphilia. But fair enough. And some men, flipping back from autoandrophilia to autogynophilia, some men get really turned on when they put on a dress. Now, Blanchard, if I remember correctly, when he was doing his studies, he was studying blood flow through penile tissue. And when autogynophilic men, even the ones who are like, I just get the warm fuzzies from wearing a dress because it feels cozy, I like the soft fabric on my skin, I feel pretty, you know, those guys, Apparently, there is still some increase in blood flow to the penile tissue when they do these activities or think about doing these activities. So on some level, there is a sexual element to it. Now, they weren't able to study that inverse on women, so autoandrophiles. They were not able to do that because it's very difficult to look at the blood flow to female genitalia and tell if a woman is actually aroused. Anyway, so they don't know what turns women on because it's really difficult to actually study what turns women on. But in the case of autogynophiles, there is a sexual element to it, at least on a physiological level. On a mental level, a lot of these guys are saying, you know, hey, I just like wearing a dress. I like it. It's pleasant. And I'm looking at it and thinking, why shouldn't they? But then you've also got your guys who are, you know, wearing the dress because it's getting their rocks off, and they're, you know, putting on the cute little pigtails because it's getting their rocks off, and they're, what is it, dressing like a bimbo is a thing, I guess. Like, dude, you're getting your rocks off. It's kind of gross, you know, you're getting your rocks off in public. Like, do that in an allocated space. You can do it at home. Or, you know, honestly, I wouldn't be too upset if there were like clubs that men could go to where they could cross-dress freely. I know that there kind of are, but I think we should have more of that available to men, where it's like, hey, if you want to cross-dress, if you want to play around with this stuff, you know, go to this nice, safe, private area, and you and a bunch of other people can go playing around with gender performance as much as you want. And that way it's not out in the streets in public where, you know, people and their kids are going to get exposed to it. Because a lot of people are grossed out by it. Oh God, well, let's just muddy the waters even further. What happens if you're a woman with a beard and a deep voice? Do you wear dresses? Because that way you're signaling to people, no, I know I'm a woman. I just took testosterone for too long and now I sound like this and I look like this. But really, I'm a woman. Like, what are you supposed to do? Like, there's some really complicated problems that start to arise with a lot of this stuff. You know, it is complicated. There's a lot of complicated stuff here. One of the thoughts that was put forward in this interview is this idea that gender boundaries have been pushed too far. And that's the reason why we're struggling with the problems that we're struggling with today. People are so eager to break the mold of gender conformity that we're ending up with men parading around in dresses and women trying to look like men. And really what we need to do is return to more strictly gender clothes. You know, get men to wear men's clothes, women to wear women's clothes. Let's kind of not be playing around with these boundaries so much, and let's make it much more societally acceptable for people to just conform. This is the argument that's put forward. I'm sure they worded it better than I have. I have a tendency to be skeptical of that argument. And I tend to err in the opposite direction. I tend to look at it and think that gender conformity has been too tightly enforced, believe it or no. The more that we've tried to break away from gender conformity, the more that we've accidentally reinforced gender stereotypes to the point that now a person feels like they can't just live or be or do anything without performing gender in some way. Like, if you're a guy and you want to wear nail polish, just wear some flipping nail polish. Just do it already, okay? What is it harming? Like, it should not be so horribly restrictive. That's my personal opinion. I think there's a pendulum element to it as well, where it's like we've been going further and further and further into breaking gender norms, and then at some point it just kind of went swinging back in the opposite direction. Now everybody's like absolutely sick to the back teeth of people trying to break gender norms. It's like, just wear some normal clothes already. I still tend to lean in the direction of breaking gender norms, or at least bending them slightly. I think that should be an acceptable thing, because I think that so many of these young people with ROGD, they feel like I think it is my interpretation that many of them are under the impression that if they can't adhere to very strict ideas and notions about what gendered behavior is, then they're somehow gender nonconforming or not appropriately performing their gender, which I think is really their sex. They're not appropriately acting, the way they should as a male or female. And I think that's ridiculous, because there are plenty of tomboys out there in the world. And there are plenty of, kind of feminine guys out there in the world. And I think that we as a society need to be more accepting of that. Particularly, sadly, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh no, we've been feminizing men too much. It's like, yeah, I understand. We've been over feminizing men. It's a problem. We keep pushing men to be talking about their feelings or some shit. We don't understand. I think the psychological community in particular does not understand how men operate. Like, there's so much advice out there for men on dealing with their emotions that is basically geared toward women dealing with their emotions instead of men dealing with their emotions, because men and women are not the same thing. However, apart from the fact that the psychological community just completely fucked up when it came to teaching men how to deal with emotions in ways that are healthy. Oh, just be women. That doesn't work. There are men in this world who are just inherently effeminate. And we as a society have failed to be accepting of these men. And so I think that is something that we as a society need to be more open-minded about. Some men have feminine tendencies. That's okay. That's okay. A person is not less of a person if they have feminine tendencies, male or female. That doesn't make them less of a person. And I think there's this bias in favor of masculine women, because it's like, well, masculinity is admirable, so when women are masculine, they're just being admirable, or at least trying to be more like things that are admirable. But when a man is effeminate, it's like, what are you doing? Why would you want that? Why would anybody want that? Well, some people do. Some people do. It's okay. And we need to make it more okay in our society for men to be effeminate, particularly. Okay. Somebody's just not riding right on the ribs. All right. Particularly because many gay men, are effeminate. Not all gay men are effeminate, but some of them are. And when they are, it's really hard on them because society isn't accepting of them. It's not accepting of them for being gay. I'm seeing this more and more and more. There's a lot of homophobia still out there in society, particularly in the trans community. If you're gay and you're homophobic, what do you do with yourself? Well, you transition, because then everything's going to be okay. And because people are lying to you and telling you that you can turn yourself into a real woman. Does not work like that. Or a real man. Again, does not work like that. But that's what people are telling you. And so a lot of people who are gay, who just don't want to have to deal with being gay, they transition because they think they're going to be able to fix their problems. It doesn't. It does not fix those problems. But there's a huge problem with homophobia in the trans community. Huge. That deserves its own video. That deserves a lot of videos, honestly. I'm not as aware of it because I'm an autoandrophile, so I'm over on the other side of Blanchard's typology going, clothing and arousal. These are issues that we need to think about because they're complicated. Whereas a lot of people who are in the trans community, particularly the ones who are like, well, I'm not like one of those AGP people with their weird fetish. They're gay. A lot of them are gay, and they're not being given the acceptance and the tolerance that they deserve as human beings. And that's the reason that they end up in the trans community, and that's not okay. I've seen a lot of gay people who are saying that transition is one of the oldest forms of conversion therapy. You're gay? Well, we don't like that. Let's just transition you over to the other gender, and then you'll be okay. You'll be like us. You'll be normal. And that's bad. That's bad. Okay, there is no such thing as comfortable when you're pregnant. There just isn't. Whew. So I know I've been rambling a lot all over the board here, but I don't know. I see this tendency to treat AGP, autogynophiles, as this scapegoat, to paint them all as these horrible, disgusting monsters that, you see sometimes. And I think that it is important for people to be aware of autogynophilia. Like, that's one thing that GenSpect has been talking about and working on, and I think that's very important. I think people should be aware that autogynophilia exists, because a lot of people aren't, and it's important. As an autoandrophile who spent years and years being confused by my sexuality, it would have been so goddamn nice if someone had told me, hey, you're an autoandrophile, or hey, autoandrophilia is a thing. But I think at the same time, painting it as this disgusting fetish is not helpful, because not everybody who's an autogynophile is being disgusting about it. Even Brianna Ivy in her video, I don't know her history. I don't know her sexual inclinations. I'm not even going to pretend to guess. I don't know enough about her to have any clue. But when she says, hey, I paint my nails because it makes me feel pretty, I wear my hair long because it makes me feel pretty. Yeah, a lot of autogynophiles do. It makes us feel, it makes us feel pretty. Autoandrophiles. For me, it's not so much about the clothing. It makes me happy to do masculine activities. It makes me happy when I'm not pregnant to build up a lot of muscle tone, because when I look at myself in the mirror and I have really toned muscles, I feel good about myself. There are a lot of women who are just women, who are very much not autoandrophiles, who feel good about themselves when they've got good muscle tone. Some of us find that to be an important part of our lives. You want to look good. People want to look good. It's just kind of a blanket thing. Like, yes, people want to look good. I want to look good. Autogynophiles want to look good. Autogynophiles have a different idea about what it is to look good than than people who aren't autogynophiles. Now, are some of them getting horny on it? Yeah. And that's a problem. There's a lot of autogynophiles running around who are doing a lot of things that are kind of pervy. And then they're blanketing it all with well, I'm trans, so I should be allowed. No, you're a pervert. You're acting like a pervert. Everyone around you can see that you're being a pervert. Stop being a freaking pervert. It's gross. You're being gross. Take your sexuality, keep it somewhere private, and stop being gross all over the place. However, I look at the discourse around Phil Lilly wearing a dress at this GenSpect conference, and it's like, well, was he aroused when he was wearing the dress? How is that any of your damn business? Was he behaving himself? Apparently he was. That's what everybody's saying. He was being perfectly appropriate. He wasn't saying anything inappropriate. He wasn't leering at the people in the conference. He was just being a guy and standing around and doing his thing. Like that's one of the things that really worries me. Like when I had that conversation with my therapist, and I told her, that I thought I might be trans, and, I'm telling her about my experiences, and she's horrified. And it's like, look, I'm not aroused by this stuff. I'm just living my life, I'm enjoying being flattered by being told things. I think that her mind immediately went to, oh, you're getting aroused by this. No. Am I an autoandrophile? Yes. But I mean, it's kind of unnerving that everybody immediately goes to, well, are you being aroused by this? Are you sexually aroused right now? Are you turned on? None of your damn business. A pervy person is a pervy person. They don't have to be an autogynophile to be a pervert. There's plenty of perverts out in the world who are not autogynophiles. Is there a higher percentage of people who are autogynophiles who are pervy than people who are not autogynophiles? I don't have those numbers. I don't know. Quite possibly, sure. But that doesn't mean that every single autogynophile is automatically a pervert. And I'm not entirely sure that it's fair to treat all autogynophilic individuals as perverts automatically. Like, oh, that guy wore a dress, therefore he's a pervert. Okay. Was he acting pervy? Was he saying anything pervy? Was he doing anything pervy? I mean, yes, he was wearing a dress, but other than that, was there anything of a perverted or sexual nature going on? No. No, it was just a guy wearing a dress. So, okay, what's the problem? Can't a man be effeminate? Is that not allowed? I'm trailing off. I'm having a really hard time concentrating because it's kind of uncomfortable right at the moment. And I don't entirely know where to end this video. I think that there is this tendency to blame autogynophiles specifically for all the problems in the trans community. It's like, oh, it's those autogynophiles over there. They're not really trans like the rest of us. And that's just probably, that's kind of not really true. Like, functionally, that's just not how it all plays out in real life. There's plenty of people who, from the looks of things, are autogynophiles who are busy calling out other people who are more pervy or weird or fetishistic than they are and saying, oh, those are autogynophiles. It's like, yeah, but you are too. Don't you realize? Like, aren't you paying attention? Haven't you looked in a mirror? You are too. You're just not a pervert. Like, you can be an autogynophile without being a raging pervert. But they want to make this distinction, like, oh, I'm a real trans person, that's a pervert, and we're just going to say autogynophile. No, you're both autogynophiles. One of you is perverse, and the other one of you is not perverse. That's where your distinction should be, in my opinion. That's where you should draw the line. Am I acting like a freaking pervert? Yes, no. No? Okay, cool. Am I acting like a freaking pervert? Yes. That's not okay. Cut it out. Like, I think that people should call out the perverse behavior in the trans community. I think people should be, particularly inside the trans community. If you're already there and you look around and you see people acting like just super pervy, say, hey, dude, you're acting like a pervert. Knock it off. Like, behave yourself. Keep it in your pants, man. But, I mean, that doesn't mean that an autogynophile is inherently a bad thing. And it doesn't mean, like, I think that people want to draw this distinction between autogynophiles and trans people. And there's too much overlap. There just is. There are way too many people who are true transgenders, true transsexuals, the real transgender people. They're autogynophiles too. Like, if you actually look at the definition, same thing with me. I'm an autoandrophile. Am I being a pervert all over the place? Dude, I got too much stuff to do to be a pervert all over the place. I just want to live my life, And I think there's a lot of autogynophiles and autoandrophiles out there in the world. They just want to live their life, And maybe they are wearing women's underwear under all their normal clothes because it just makes them feel pretty. It's soft and it's silky and they like it. Okay, cool, fine. Why is that a problem? I think there are plenty of us out there in the world living our lives, and this is a part of our lives without being pervy about it. And I think that to a certain extent should be accepted. And I think it is with a lot of autoandrophiles because we're so under the radar. Everybody looks at me and they're like, okay, you're a tomboy. It's like, yep, I'm a tomboy. There you go. Easy. Nobody questions it. Nobody looks at me twice. There's nothing about me that gives a pervy vibe, right? But with a man in a dress, it's kind of harder because we don't have a societal place for that. So, it's tricky. I don't think that blaming all autogynophiles for the problems in the trans community is fair or even accurate. I don't think it's accurate. I think that some people in the trans community are super perverted and super gross, and they need to cut it out, and they need to be called out on their bullshit. And I think that that's going to be a really good thing for all the rest of us who aren't being disgusting perverts. Because there's plenty of autogynophiles in the world who are not being disgusting perverts. Painting us all with this broad brush of, oh, autogynophile equals pervert. It's really harmful for people who are living with autogynophilia and trying to find healthy ways to process these feelings and integrate these feelings into their lives in a healthy way, because that's something I'm working on, integrating autoandrophilic feelings into my life in a healthy way, which I should make a video about that because I've been trying out some things. But like, yeah, just demonizing us is not helping. I'm not sure what good comes from that. So anyway, that's been a super long rant in a very cold car with blankets everywhere. I'm going to take my fat ass and I'm going to go do some other things that I need to get done today. I hope you are all in good health, and I will talk to you guys later.